My next guest, as promised, is Maria Farmer, who says Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell sexually assaulted her. So she says she saw Trump at Epstein's office late at night in 1995. At the time, she was 25 years old. Epstein had just hired Farmer, who was an artist, to help him acquire art. Now, Farmer urged the FBI to look at Trump's connections to Epstein twice, in 1996 and again in 2006, which, of course, means Trump's name could very well be in those government files that the administration is refusing to release. Maria Farmer is now suing the government to try to get the unredacted files about the allegations she brought forward about Epstein. Now, President Trump has not been the target of any investigation related to Epstein, nor has he been accused of any criminal wrongdoing in this case. Maria Farmer is out front now for her first television interview, sharing her story since filing her lawsuit, and she is joined by her attorney, Jennifer Freeman. So thanks very much to both of you. And Maria, I want to give everyone a chance to understand exactly what happened here. I mean, you said that Jeffrey Epstein calls you to come to his office and you go, and then you're sitting there waiting and Donald Trump walks in. What happened?
Yes. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for having me on, Aaron. I really appreciate it, because I need to say up front that I've waited 3 decades to be able to even be heard about this, because the government has not held any of the people I reported accountable. And so basically the night before I went in, before I began working for Epstein, he called me at very late in the evening and asked me to come up to the Helmsley Palace offices. And I didn't even have money for a subway token. It's kind of embarrassing. So I had to go running up there. And so I told Epstein, I'll be up there. It'll probably take me until like 9. He's like, okay. So I get there and I'm waiting. It's dark. Like there's no light on in the offices. And I thought that was really weird. So I'm seated against the wall in the main part of the offices and just waiting for Epstein. And he says, I'll be out in a minute, you know, and he's got the door closed. And then a few minutes later, this man walks in a business suit, kind of tall, imposing. And I immediately was like, that's Donald Trump. What's he doing here? I'm supposed to be working for Epstein and interviewing with him. Why is Donald Trump here? And he walked up about, a few feet from me and just stood over me in a very imposing way and looked at me like he was in on some secret or something. It was really weird, like smirking, kind of. And I felt threatened, so I made an ugly face. And when I made that ugly face, Epstein walked out from the offices on this side. Trump's standing here, I'm here. And he walks out of his office and he goes, oh, no, no, no. He was laughing at me. And he goes, she's not here for you. Follow me, right? And he escorts him in to this other room. And I always wondered, who was she in there? Was someone in there, right? And I have no way of knowing, nothing. But
okay, this is absolutely explosive. Documents have leaked revealing that Donald Trump signed multiple secret pardons in the middle of the night, specifically at around 3 a.m. on November 12th, for top allies facing serious criminal charges. We're talking about pardons issued in complete secrecy, no public announcement, no standard vetting process, no consultation with the Department of Justice's pardon attorney, just Trump alone in the early morning hours, signing documents that shield his closest associates from federal prosecution. And the people being pardoned aren't just anyone. These are individuals with documented connections to the fake electors plot that attempted to overturn the 2020 election, people linked to Jeffrey Epstein's network, Trump allies who face both federal and state charges for election interference and other serious crimes. The timing is incredibly suspicious. These pardons were signed just days before crucial court deadlines, right as state indictments were about to be unsealed, at the exact moment when Trump's allies were most vulnerable to prosecution. That's not coincidence, that's calculated obstruction. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust headlines anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
strange because at the time my sister she was 15 actually. And I didn't think it was funny, even though it was just a little bit inappropriate, but I thought, I don't know what it was. But anyway, and then they entered that room.
So Epstein says she's not for you. And then when did Trump make the comment about your age? Again, you were 25 at the time, right? So, I mean, you know, you were a 25-year-old woman. Yeah.
Yeah, I was
But
a
was it
woman,
after Epstein
right.
said that comment
But-
that he made the comment about age, or?
Yes. So he first said, no, she's not here for you, which immediately made me feel weird. Like, was there someone there, right, in that other room? And so that's another reason I was nervous. And so as soon as he said that, laughed, I made the face, all that stuff, they started to walk away into that other room where he's escorting him. He goes, come with me. And he takes Trump into this other room in the offices at 9 o'clock at night. And there's no one else that I know of in these offices.
The leak came from whistleblowers inside the administration who were apparently horrified by what they witnessed. They describe a chaotic scene, Trump making pardon decisions without proper legal review, without consulting White House counsel, without following any of the normal procedures that govern presidential pardons, just Trump alone, or with a few loyalists deciding who gets immunity from prosecution for helping him try to overturn an election. The documents show at least half a dozen pardons were issued that night, but sources suggest there could be more, that Trump may have signed additional pardons that haven't been disclosed yet, that there might be a whole category of secret pardons protecting Trump associates from various investigations, and Congress had no idea, they weren't informed, weren't consulted, found out about these pardons through leaks rather than official notification. That's triggered absolute fury on Capitol Hill. The House Oversight Committee has scheduled emergency hearings. They're demanding a complete list of everyone Trump pardoned, full transparency about the decision-making process, explanations for why these pardons were kept secret, and they're not just Democrats. Republicans are also expressing concern because even Trump's allies recognize that secret pardons for people involved in election subversion look terrible. It looks like Trump is obstructing justice, using his pardon power to protect co-conspirators, shielding people who helped him break laws from facing accountability. That's not how pardons are supposed to work. Presidential pardon power is broad, yes, but it's not supposed to be used to obstruct investigations or protect the president's own accomplices in criminal schemes. Legal experts are warning that Trump's pardon strategy could backfire spectacularly, because while pardons eliminate federal criminal liability, they don't protect against state charges, and several states are pursuing their own prosecutions of people involved in the fake elector scheme. Trump's pardons are useless against state charges, so the people he pardoned might still face prison time. And worse, accepting a pardon is admission of guilt. So these people have now officially admitted to federal crimes, which makes it easier for state prosecutors to prove their cases. The pardon leak is also raising questions about whether Trump can be prosecuted for obstruction of justice, because if he issued pardons specifically to prevent witnesses from testifying or cooperating with investigators, that's obstruction. That's using presidential power to impede criminal investigations, and that could be an impeachable offense, or potentially even a separate crime that Trump could face charges for after leaving office. Congressional Democrats are already talking about impeachment. They're arguing that secret pardons for election conspirators represent an abuse of power so egregious that it demands immediate accountability, that Trump is using his final months in office to protect himself and his allies from justice, and that Congress has an obligation to respond. The political timing is devastating for Trump. He's already facing multiple crises, legal troubles mounting, court rulings stripping away his defenses, public rejection at events, political support eroding, and now a pardon scandal that makes him look corrupt and desperate. That reinforces the narrative that Trump puts loyalty to himself above everything else, including the rule of law. The leak itself is also significant because it came from inside Trump's own administration, from people who worked for him, but were so disturbed by what they saw that they felt compelled to go public. That's a sign of how isolated Trump has become, how even people in his own White House are turning against him, how his actions are so beyond the pale that loyalists are becoming whistleblowers, and the fact that documents leaked suggest there's a paper trail, evidence of Trump's pardon decisions, potentially including notes or recordings of discussions about who to pardon and why. All of that could become evidence in future investigations or impeachment proceedings. The pardon recipients are particularly controversial. Some are people who've been charged with conspiracy to defraud the United States, with obstruction of an official proceeding, with election fraud. These aren't minor offenses. These are serious federal crimes related to an attempt to overthrow democratic elections. And Trump just gave these people get-out-of-jail-free cards. in the middle of the night, in secret, without explanation. And then there's the Epstein connection. Some of the people pardoned reportedly have links to Jeffrey Epstein's network. Now, we don't know the specifics of those connections or what charges they might have faced related to Epstein, but the timing is suspicious given that Epstein files are being released and scrutinized. Trump pardoning people connected to Epstein right as that scandal is heating up looks like he's trying to protect people who might implicate him or reveal embarrassing information. This is obstruction of justice in real time. This is Trump using presidential power corruptly, and the leak has exposed it before he could bury it. Now Congress is investigating, media is digging, and Trump's pardon scandal is becoming another massive crisis on top of all his other problems. So let's break down exactly who got pardoned, why the secrecy matters, and what consequences Trump faces for this abuse of power. All right, let's dig into the specifics of what actually happened with these secret pardons, because the details are damning. The timeline is crucial. On November 12th, around 3 a.m., Trump signed multiple pardons. This is just days before several crucial legal deadlines. Federal prosecutors were preparing to file additional charges against Trump associates involved in the fake elector scheme. State prosecutors in Georgia and other jurisdictions were about to unseal indictments, and congressional investigators were expecting key witnesses to testify. The pardons were timed perfectly to interfere with all of these proceedings. By pardoning his allies before charges were formally filed or indictments unsealed, Trump gave them immunity from federal prosecution. And by doing it right before testimony was scheduled, he eliminated any incentive for these people to cooperate with investigators. Because if you're pardoned, you can't be prosecuted federally, so you have no reason to make a deal with prosecutors or testify against others. Trump essentially shut down multiple investigations with a few signatures in the middle of the night. The people who received pardons include, according to leaked documents, several individuals who were central to the fake electors plot. These are people who helped create fraudulent electoral certificates in states Trump lost, who recruited fake electors, who submitted false documents to Congress, who coordinated with Trump's campaign on this scheme. Some of them had already been indicted, some were about to be. All of them faced serious federal charges, and Trump just erased those charges with presidential pardons. Rudy Giuliani is reportedly among those pardoned. He's been facing multiple investigations and charges related to his work trying to overturn the 2020 election. He's been charged in Georgia with racketeering. He's faced federal investigations into his lobbying activities and potential campaign finance violations. A Trump pardon wipes away the federal exposure, leaves only state charges, which Giuliani will have to fight without the threat of federal prosecution hanging over him. Other pardoned individuals include campaign officials, lawyers who advised Trump on election challenges, and operatives who worked at the state level to implement the fake elector scheme. The exact number and full list of names hasn't been publicly disclosed, but whistleblowers say at least 6 people received pardons that night, and there may be more that haven't been revealed yet. The process by which these pardons were issued is highly irregular. Normally, presidential pardons go through a formal review process. The Department of Justice has a pardon attorney whose office reviews applications, checks for legal issues, makes recommendations to the president. The process is supposed to be transparent and deliberative. Trump bypassed all of that. He didn't consult the pardon attorney, didn't get input from DOJ leadership, didn't even tell his White House counsel what he was doing until after the fact. This was Trump acting alone or with a tiny circle of loyalists, making pardon decisions based on personal loyalty rather than justice or legal merit, and he kept it secret. Normally, presidential pardons are announced publicly. There's a press release, official documentation, public record, but Trump signed these pardons at 3 a.m. and didn't announce them, didn't file proper paperwork making them public, just quietly had documents delivered to the recipients telling them they were pardoned. Congress found out through leaks, media found out through whistleblowers. The public has still not seen official confirmation or documentation of all the pardons Trump issued. This secrecy is not just unusual, it may be illegal. There are regulations governing how pardons must be documented and recorded. Trump may have violated those regulations by keeping pardons secret, and there are serious questions about whether secret pardons are even valid. Can a president issue pardons that nobody knows about? Is a pardon effective if it's not properly documented and made part of the official record? These are legal questions that courts may have to resolve, and the answers could determine whether Trump's pardons actually protect the people who receive them. The Epstein connection adds another disturbing layer. Multiple sources report that some pardon recipients have links to Jeffrey Epstein's network. Now, we need to be careful here, because the exact nature of these connections isn't fully known, but the timing is highly suspicious. Epstein files are being released, names are being revealed, connections between Epstein and powerful people are being scrutinized. And right in the middle of this, Trump issues secret pardons to people connected to that network. This raises obvious questions. Is Trump trying to protect people who might implicate him in Epstein-related activities? Is he shielding allies who have information about his connections to Epstein? Is this about covering up potential crimes or embarrassing associations? We don't have definitive answers, but the optics are terrible, and investigators are certainly going to look into whether Trump's pardon decisions were motivated by desire to obstruct the Epstein investigation. Congressional reaction has been swift and furious. The House Oversight Committee announced emergency hearings within hours of the leak. Committee Chair Jamie Raskin issued a statement saying that secret pardons for election conspirators and Epstein associates represent a fundamental abuse of presidential power, that Congress has an obligation to investigate and hold Trump accountable. Republicans on the committee are in a difficult position. They don't want to defend secret pardons for people involved in election subversion, but they also don't want to break with Trump publicly. So you're seeing a lot of carefully worded statements expressing concern while avoiding direct criticism of Trump, but even that measured concern is significant because it shows Trump has lost the complete loyalty of his party, even on his own committee. The legal implications are profound. First, there's a question of whether Trump obstructed justice by issuing these pardons. If the purpose was to prevent witnesses from cooperating with investigators or to shield co-conspirators from prosecution, that's obstruction. That's using presidential power to impede law enforcement. And while presidents have broad pardon power, they can't use it to obstruct justice. That's a potential crime. Second, there's the impeachment question. Democrats are arguing that secret pardons for election conspirators constitute high crimes and misdemeanors, that this is exactly the kind of abuse of power that impeachment was designed to address. They're calling for articles of impeachment to be drafted immediately. Third, there are questions about the validity of the pardons themselves. If they weren't properly documented or publicly announced, are they even effective? Can courts invalidate pardons that don't follow proper procedures? These are novel legal questions that could end up before the Supreme Court. Fourth, accepting a pardon is an admission of guilt. That's established Supreme Court precedent, so everyone Trump pardoned has now essentially admitted to federal crimes. That admission can be used against them in state prosecutions, civil cases, and congressional proceedings. They can't invoke Fifth Amendment rights anymore because they can't be prosecuted federally, so they have to testify if subpoenaed, and if they lie, they can be charged with perjury. Trump may have thought he was protecting his allies, but he may have actually exposed them to more legal jeopardy by eliminating their ability to refuse to testify. The political fallout is just beginning. This pardon scandal gives Democrats a clear narrative going into 2026 elections that Trump is corrupt, that he puts personal loyalty above the rule of law, that he used his final days in office to protect criminals who helped him try to overturn an election. That's a powerful message, especially combined with all of Trump's other legal troubles and the evidence of his criminal conduct that's becoming public through trials. Republicans have to decide whether to defend Trump's pardons or distance themselves. Either choice has costs. Defending them means defending obvious corruption and obstruction, but distancing means alienating Trump's base and facing potential primary challenges. Most Republicans are trying to avoid taking a clear position, saying they need more information before commenting, but that position becomes untenable as more details leak and as congressional hearings force them to take stands. The whistleblowers who leaked the pardon documents are heroes in this story. They saw Trump abusing power in secret and decided the American people needed to know. That took courage, because whistleblowers often face retaliation, career damage, legal threats, but they did it anyway because they believed transparency and accountability were more important than protecting Trump. Their actions have sparked a national conversation about presidential power and its limits, about whether secret pardons should be allowed, about how Congress and courts can check a president who abuses the pardon power. These are important constitutional questions that will shape American governance for decades, and they're being debated now because whistleblowers refuse to let Trump's corruption remain hidden. Okay, let's break down what this pardon scandal actually means going forward. Point 1. Trump's secret 3 a.m. pardons represent a clear abuse of presidential power and could constitute obstruction of justice. This isn't a normal use of the pardon power. Presidents typically pardon people who've served their time and rehabilitated, or people who were wrongly convicted, or people whose sentences were disproportionate to their crimes. What presidents don't typically do is secretly pardon co-conspirators who helped them commit crimes right before those people are about to face charges or testify. That's not clemency. That's obstruction. Trump is using his pardon power to interfere with criminal investigations, to protect people who could implicate him, to prevent witnesses from cooperating with prosecutors. That's a corrupt use of presidential authority, and it could be grounds for prosecution after Trump leaves office. Because while the president has broad pardon power, that power can't be used to obstruct justice. If prosecutors can prove Trump issued pardons specifically to impede investigations, that's a crime. And it's a crime that Trump could be charged with once he's no longer president. Point 2. The pardons may not actually protect recipients as much as Trump thinks, because accepting a pardon is admission of guilt and provides no protection against state charges. This is crucial. When you accept a presidential pardon, you're admitting you committed the crime you're being pardoned for. That's established law from a 1915 Supreme Court case. So everyone Trump pardoned has now officially admitted to federal crimes. That admission can be used against them in state court, can be used in civil cases, can be used by congressional investigators, and they can't invoke Fifth Amendment protections anymore because they can't be prosecuted federally for the pardoned crimes. So if Congress subpoenas them, they have to testify. If they lie, they can be charged with perjury. Trump thought he was protecting these people, but he may have actually made their legal situations worse because now they've admitted guilt and lost their Fifth Amendment rights, and they still face state charges that the federal pardon doesn't cover. Several states are prosecuting fake electors and others involved in election subversion. Those prosecutions proceed regardless of federal pardons. So the people Trump pardoned may still end up in prison, just in state rather than federal facilities. Point 3. The secret nature of the pardons and the failure to follow proper procedures may render them invalid or subject to court challenges. There are real questions about whether these pardons are even legally effective. Presidential pardons are supposed to be documented, made public, entered into official records. Trump bypassed all of that. He issued pardons in secret, didn't file proper paperwork, didn't make official announcements. Some legal experts are arguing that secret pardons that don't follow proper procedures might not be valid, that courts could potentially void them. This is unprecedented territory. We don't have clear precedent on whether secret pardons are enforceable, so this could end up in litigation, with prosecutors challenging the validity of Trump's pardons and courts having to decide whether a president can issue pardons secretly without following normal procedures. If courts rule that the pardons are invalid, then all the people Trump thought he was protecting are suddenly facing prosecution again. That would be a massive legal disaster for Trump and his allies. Point 4. Congressional hearings and potential impeachment proceedings will force disclosure of who was pardoned and why, exposing the full extent of Trump's corruption. The House Oversight Committee has scheduled hearings. They're demanding full transparency, complete list of everyone pardoned, documentation of the decision-making process, testimony from White House officials about what happened. Trump can try to resist these demands, claim executive privilege, or refuse to cooperate, but that just makes him look more guilty, makes it more obvious he's trying to hide something. And there are whistleblowers who can testify, documents that have already leaked, evidence that Congress can use to build a comprehensive picture of Trump's pardon abuse. If the evidence shows Trump pardoned people specifically to obstruct investigations or protect himself from legal jeopardy, that could lead to impeachment. Democrats are already talking about articles of impeachment based on the pardon abuse. In this time, some Republicans might support it, because secretly pardoning election conspirators is indefensible. Even Trump's allies recognize that. Point 5. This scandal further erodes Trump's political standing and gives opponents powerful ammunition for 2026 campaigns and beyond. The pardon leak is politically devastating for Trump. It confirms what critics have always said about him, that he's corrupt, that he puts personal loyalty above the rule of law, that he'll abuse any power he has to protect himself and his allies. This narrative is damaging in multiple ways. First, it alienates moderate voters who might have been persuadable. Secret pardons for criminals looks exactly like the swamp behavior Trump claimed to oppose. Second, it gives Democrats clear campaign messaging. They can run on accountability and rule of law, point to Trump's pardons as evidence of Republican corruption, make every Republican candidate answer whether they support Trump's pardon abuse. Third, it further fractures the Republican Party. Some Republicans will defend Trump reflexively, others will distance themselves. The party will be divided on how to respond, and that division weakens Republicans heading into elections. The timing of the scandal makes it worse. This is happening as Trump already faces multiple crises: legal defeats, public rejection, eroding party support. The pardon leak adds another crisis to an already unsustainable situation. It's yet more evidence that Trump's presidency is spiraling out of control, that he's desperate and flailing, that his grip on power is slipping, and that narrative of decline becomes self-fulfilling. Because politicians distance themselves from declining leaders, donors become less enthusiastic, media coverage becomes more negative, public opinion turns, and the decline accelerates. So where does this leave us? With evidence that Trump issues secret pardons to protect allies from prosecution for helping him try to overturn an election, with congressional investigations exposing the full extent of the corruption, with potential impeachment proceedings based on abuse of pardon power, with legal questions about whether the pardons are even valid, with Trump's allies potentially facing state prosecutions despite federal pardons, and with massive political damage to Trump and Republicans generally, the pardon scandal is going to dominate news cycles for weeks or months. Every hearing will generate headlines. Every new revelation will damage Trump further. Every Republican forced to defend or condemn the pardons will face political consequences. This is a crisis that keeps growing rather than fading, and it's happening because whistleblowers decided the American people needed to know what Trump was doing in secret. Their courage in exposing Trump's corruption may end up being one of the most important acts in this entire saga, because without that leak, Trump would have successfully shielded his co-conspirators from accountability, would have obstructed justice without consequence, would have proven that presidential power has no real limits. The whistleblowers prevented that outcome. They ensured that Trump's abuse would be exposed, that Congress would investigate, that the public would understand what happened, that accountability might still be possible. That's the power of transparency, of people inside government refusing to go along with corruption, of choosing country over loyalty to a corrupt leader. And it's a reminder that even in dark times, when powerful people abuse authority, there are still patriots who will stand up and do the right thing, who will risk their careers and safety to ensure the truth comes out. The pardon scandal is far from over. More names will be revealed, more hearings will be held, more legal challenges will be filed, but we already know the core truth. Trump abused his pardon power to obstruct justice and protect criminals. And thanks to brave whistleblowers, we have the evidence to prove it and hold him accountable.